Goshawks are used as basically an indicator of not necessarily old growth, but characteristics found in forests that are, sometimes it's just older forests rather than old growth. First, large trees. They need trees so big that they get a branch sticking out of it large enough to support its nest in the lower third of a canopy. So that means the lowest branch has to be the big branch. There's very few trees around here that can do that, or sites that can get a tree big enough.
The Forest Field Team is Conservation Northwest's flagship program. It's about protecting our treasured old-growth forests, restoring damaged stands, and reconnecting fragmented ecosystems so wildlife can thrive in prime habitat.
I grew up with a dad, fortunately, who was a game warden, so I was exposed to wildlife from a really young age. Conservation Northwest gives me the opportunity to look at nearly every terrestrial issue that could impact wildlife.
It's about removing old roads to keep waterways healthy.
Vehicles were driving right down to within 5 feet of the river. And so we brought in a contractor to create some barriers, tank traps.
Balancing recreation, making ecological diversity a priority, and as the climate changes, finding an approach to wildfire that can make forests more resilient.
When we see ourselves as inextricably linked to the wildlife, to the water, to the plants and the soil, we need to make sure that we're actively working to maintain those systems, and we have our hands in the dirt and we're contributing to the health of the ecosystem.
We're standing in the Sherman Pass project area. It was recently treated where we're standing, and in other areas it's currently being treated. And this is a specific sore spot in the conservation community because the Forest Service and the conservation community weren't necessarily able to find consensus.
Getting local, regional, and federal policy on the right track is a big part of it. But the heart of the work is a team of immensely talented people who get out there ground truthing on forest lands and in communities, making sure policy and practice put healthy, functioning ecosystems front and center.
So it sounds pretty nerdy, but I like the geometric structure of forests and exactly how an animal's going to use that. So that when I walk into the woods, it's kind of like saying, there's so-and-so's home and there's so-and-so. I look at the forest a lot like a neighborhood and a community often.
Our Forest Field Team is small but mighty. We have 5 people that work full-time on the Forest Field Team, and they are responsible for 7 million acres of Washington forests. And that's about the same size as Massachusetts.
We would try to see, when is the Forest Service coming in here next? And if they're not coming in here anytime soon, is there a time we could ask that they get in here? What does that take? Is it extra money? Is it getting a contractor? Is it doing something separate out of a project? What's gonna work for me in, say, Wenatchee is not the same that's gonna work in Bellingham. They're 2 different forests. It's 2 different communities. And so it becomes really important for Conservation Northwest to be able to remain flexible within forage management, but know all the options.
I love working with the Forest Field Team because I get to go on these adventures with these brilliant people in the woods, and I learn so much from them.
This is great edge habitat, and if I were a lynx, I'd be walking just right about here, spying on all the snowshoe hare that might be lurking underneath that brush.
There's a sport following. There's guys who feel a sense of pride or masculinity or testosterone, something that really, they just find this the most exciting thing to cut down a tree. It's a large tree that's more than 5 feet wide in one spot. And so I think that not having a road here would have done some service to probably protect this tree.
I'm standing on the edge of a prescribed fire, and the function of this was to kind of recreate some landscape disturbance, bring in some understory grasses and forbs for deer and elk forage. and just to create a little bit of pockets of diversity on the landscape.
Forest Field Team has really remained at the core of Conservation Northwest, and through that work, it's the thread that goes through every single program that we have now.
Mostly I'm working with the Forest Service because that's got some of the biggest land ownership, but I just as easily could work with DNR in a day, or the Yakima Nation, or the Colville Confederated Tribes, or I could work with the Chelan County or Okanagan County governments.
I get to focus on different topics like wildlife, forestry, soil health, water health, fire on the landscape, food sovereignty, right?
So this is a wood ear fungus, one of the kinds of foods that we can find in these forests.
We're all over the state. So we're not just doing this all from a Seattle office advising on people's forests on the east side of the state. We're in the community, we're part of the community. And I think that really goes a long way in helping get our message out and bringing people on board with what we're trying to do.
Success on the big scale, I would say, would be community engagement, involving more voices on the forest management. These are lands that we want to manage for all people, for all different purposes and reasons. We have restoration events that we publicize. We have monitoring programs that people can get involved in. So there's a lot of different ways that folks can contribute to the work that we do at Conservation Northwest.
From Conservation Northwest's earliest days, our Forest Field Team has been chalking up big wins for habitat, for wildlife, and for the people who love and depend on healthy forests.
There's 4 claw marks there. So that's a black bear coming up, and who knows why he wanted to climb this tree, but this was large enough structure to support his climbing. Could have just been for fun.